Oh, hey. Sorry, you caught me by surprise there. I was just looking at something. It's Shadoe at Night for Thursday, August the 14th, 2025. There is no guest on the show tonight. We've had some great guests this week so far, wouldn't you say? I mean, we had Grant Abraham on last night, the leader of the United Party of Canada. I think it's a one-man show at this stage of the game, but boy, did he have some interesting things to say last night, and he is fully illuminated, baby. He is wide awake. He understands what's going on, and he's trying to do everything he can to stop it, short of separation. He would rather not see Alberta separate, but if it does, it could become a bastion of freedom for the rest of Canada to look at, and a reformation kind of a thing. That was just one of the things we talked about last night. If you missed last night's show, you might want to go back and watch it because, yeah, there was a lot of, it was long, could have been much longer. We'll bring him back for a part 2 of that conversation soon, but man, there was so much stuff we covered last night. Tuesday night, we had Jeff Evely on. He's the former CAF, the former member of the Canadian Armed Forces, a veteran who walked into the woods in Nova Scotia the other day, got himself a $28,000 plus ticket, and will now be fighting that ticket in court as part of a constitutional case. Is the government in Nova Scotia breaching the Charter of Rights and Freedoms? No idea when that case will be heard. It has to develop. In the meantime, Jeff has got an appearance in provincial court next month. And on Monday night, we had veteran firefighter, 30-year firefighter Peter McIsaac on the show. He's also a Canadian ambassador for Freedom Train International. And man, he said he's experienced walls of flames in his career 300, 400 feet high. So when it comes to fire safety, fire prevention, wouldn't you think he knows what he's talking about? There are people who don't. Politicians, ex-politicians, ex-bureaucrats, now talking heads for left-wing corporate media. And we'll get to that in just a few minutes. Yeah, it's going to enrage you, but in a good way. You might actually laugh. You might actually laugh. Hello, good evening. Who's watching tonight? Let's see. Who have we got? Debbie. Debbie is watching in Tabor, Alberta. Karen is watching in North Bay. Hello, Laura, watching in Sherwood Park. Lorna in Saskatchewan. Pierre Poilievre was there today doing a press conference near Saskatoon. We'll get to that in a few minutes. Hello, Caroline in Niagara Falls. Linda's watching in The Hat. Jeannie is watching in Stonewall, Manitoba. Luella in Red Deer. Hello, Petronella watching on YouTube. Colleen is watching in Madoc, Ontario. And over on Rumble, we've got Esky Dogs, Patricia, Robin, and Eva. Cananon, Patriot, Cosford, Bailey 242424, Vilma Dow, Porter Boy, El Dupuis, all the regulars and some new faces on Rumble as well. No matter what platform you guys are watching on, no matter where you're watching from, do not forget to enable your notifications. Make sure you're notified when the show starts. It shouldn't be difficult. It's weeknights. Well, it will be full weeknights again after Labor Day, but for now, Monday to Thursday at 8 o'clock Central Time. But if you need to enable your notifications to remind you, then go ahead and do that, because a lot of people still complain, Shadoe, I don't get notifications for your show. Like it's somehow my fault. Like I crawled into your phone last night when you were sleeping and I turned your notifications off. Yeah. And you got to make sure they're on. And sometimes Meta, Facebook, Instagram, and Google, YouTube will shut them off for you for no reason. They just do that. So make sure your notifications on. Don't forget to like and share. Get this out to as many people as you possibly can. Hang on, guys. The show. Oh, by the way, how to talk to the normies. Part 2 of that conversation for the All Access Nighthawks tonight at shadowdavis.com. The show begins in 30 seconds. I could have had a guest tonight, but I thought, I want to catch up on the week's events and let you guys know, and me as well. Let us all know what the hell's going on these days, because it's been a few days since we have mentioned bits and pieces of the news in the interviews we've done these last 3 days, and notably the Walking in the Woods ban in Nova Scotia has been big news, and also that court case in BC with the First Nations controlling land there now. So yeah, we're definitely going to cover the stories we missed tonight. And on, I think probably Monday or Tuesday night, we're going to have Angelina on from Delta Hospice Society. Now, this is an interesting situation. I've kind of been following this case, and they want to open a new hospice in BC. Now, hospice obviously is for end-of-life care, mostly for older people, sometimes younger people with disease, life-ending disease, right? So they've been in contact with the government, and they've been told, now this is only from what I've garnered in interviews that we've heard her do before, because they want to continue with end-of-life care, and they're trying to talk to government for licensing, for possible funding. Government is suggesting that Delta Hospice Society start pushing MAID, And if they do that, they'll be rewarded by the government through some kind of grant. And if they don't, just going to shut them down. So I'm not sure if that's the exact story or the whole story, but we'll have Angelina from Delta Hospice Society on the show next week. You see, I'm already starting to set next week up. Mark Carney met with First Nations leaders and Métis leaders late last week. Some of them got up and walked out of the meeting because they were upset that a certain group was there they don't recognize as being Métis. It's a whole big cluster F is going on in the First Nations community in Canada right now. The West doesn't recognize the East, and so on and so on and so on. But Mark Carney, he wants to meet with these folks so that he can get some big projects passed. Bill C-5 is going to enable him to move straight ahead, get infrastructure. Well, listen to him tell you. He wants to build, baby.
Has the potential, as I say, to unleash enormous possibilities, to build big things, ports, trade corridors, energy infrastructure, to help develop our natural resources, our critical minerals, help develop our people in ways that connect and transform our economy. Part of, at the core of this act is changing how the federal government operates. One aspect of that is moving from a position when we see a new project from asking the question why to asking the question how. How can we build?
Okay, so what he just said there, from my radio years, I heard every CEO from every large broadcasting telemedia company in this country say the exact words. And you want to know what happened? Nothing. Nothing at all. And he's talking like a chairman of a boardroom here. Watch him again.
How can we build?
Not why. How can we do this? Nothing so far anyway.
Core to that concept of how we build is building in true partnership with Indigenous peoples. And that's why we're here to listen.
He does not want to build infrastructure for energy, unless it's possibly power lines from wind farms in BC to Ontario. But then again, they can already build their own wind farms in Ontario. The only real thing you would need a pipeline for, a corridor, an energy corridor for, is oil and gas. And he has no intention of doing any of that. You can bet your bottom dollar. And when push comes to shove, at the end of the day, he's going to blame the First Nations for it. He is going to blame the Indian chiefs as the reason that Canada, even with Bill C-5, cannot get any major infrastructure projects done. And we will not become an energy superpower feeding the rest of the world. If you've read his book, Values, or even seen a summary of it on some chat GTP or other AI, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. Mark Carney has no intention, not in Canada anyway, of getting any oil and gas out of the ground. Now, Pierre Poilievre, oil and grass. Pierre Poilievre gave a press conference near Saskatoon today. Interesting what he says at the end here. At the very end of this 3-minute piece, I want you guys to write down in comments what you think he means by this. Let's watch.
Things are not changing as he promised they would. In fact, they are actually getting worse. In replacing Justin Trudeau, he claimed that things would be different. Well, they're different only in that they continue to worsen. There have been many grand announcements, high-profile meetings, and grand statements, but none of the results promised. Government spending is growing faster than ever, faster than when Justin Trudeau was Prime Minister. Inflation and the cost of living continue to rise. Housing costs, which had already doubled, are now rising faster than before. And we see that the home building numbers are worse today, even after Carney promised that he would double them. Crime rages in our streets as catch and release laws still release the most dangerous monsters to terrorize our communities. Carney has kept Justin Trudeau's out-of-control immigration numbers. Worse, the Liberal government has lost track of 600 foreign criminals with records of committing crime in Canada who should have been deported but are now wandering our streets, God knows where, doing God knows what. Low-wage temporary foreign workers take jobs and drive wages down for our youth. No major projects, such as pipelines, have been proposed, approved, or begun construction. His energy cap, Carney's energy cap, industrial carbon tax, and continued support for banning pipelines, for the laws that ban pipeline, are keeping our resources in the ground and making us more dependent than ever on the Americans. So much for, he said it was going to be build, baby, build. So far it's been block, baby, block. He's not actually getting anything built. He's all talk and no action. Things are not different. They are getting worse. And there's more trouble ahead. Mark Carney's promised to ban your gas, truck, and car, which a ban that begins phasing in just months from today. It will kill jobs, balloon cost, and grind rural communities to a halt. Farmers, ranchers, resource workers would not be able to do their jobs because EVs don't work over long distances and in cold weather. It would literally erase many small towns from the map. Now, a lot of people will say that is hyperbole, but I asked the farmers here today, could the rural communities across the prairies actually continue to go on if they had to drive exclusively electric vehicles? Could that run on an electric battery? How could you move your grain to markets? How could you do the regular work that's required to have a pickup truck in minus 40-degree weather in February? It is simply not possible. What Mark Carney was doing by banning gas vehicles is he is banning the rural way of life. What Mark Carney was doing by banning gas vehicles is he is banning the rural way of life.
What Mark Carney is doing by banning gas vehicles, and it's not an outright ban until 2035, I want to clarify that, is banning the rural way of life. What did he mean by that? I'm looking at your comments right now. Hello, Beth, watching in Merritt. How you doing? Yeah, canola, Stephen, we're going to get to that. You remember what Grant Abraham said yesterday, Mary? Yeah. Here's one from Bob. Self-explanatory, fits right in with the Wildlands Project. But does Poilievre know that? And if he does, why doesn't he just come out and say it instead of making little subtle drops like that? What Mark Carney is doing is banning the rural way. Just come out and say it. Or are his advisors saying, if you come out and say that, the left-wing corporate media is going to call you a conspiracy theorist and you'll be gone as leader in a heartbeat? It's a very interesting question. I don't know if Pierre Poilievre is captured or not, or if they've got something. I don't know. But that whole election campaign, aside from the rallies, just didn't seem right to me somehow. He changed his posture up until the last week of the campaign. Oh, and by the way, Roger, watching on YouTube right now, I see your comment. You will move to the 15-minute city. What do you think they're doing with fires right now? When they evacuate people out of the fire zones, they move them into the cities. And this has been going on for years, whether it's fires or floods, whatever the disaster, they move those folks into the cities. And guess what? A large percentage of them stay in the cities. It's quite interesting, isn't it? All right, so left-wing corporate CTV says it's devastating. Manitoba farmers react to Chinese canola tariffs. Now, these tariffs came into play a few days ago, but they were enacted by China back in March or April in response, some say, to Canada's 100% tariff on Chinese electric vehicles coming into Canada, because they're trying to buck up the electric vehicle industry here in Canada, even though all of the big automakers have met with Carney and said, we can't do this. It's not sustainable. Are you out of your mind? You see, this is how dedicated Mark Carney is to this green agenda, to the Green New Deal. Remember who he is. Read his book, or at least a summary of it. Ask the AI, whatever AI you use. If you don't use any, read the book. Find out for yourself. Remember who he is. He is a climate zealot. He has no intention of ever getting rid of that mandate. He has no intention of ever getting oil and gas out of the ground, building these super energy corridors in Canada. He's lying through his teeth, just like he's been doing ever since he was brought into the spotlight in Canada at the beginning of January. When David Hamblin heard China is slapping a nearly 76% tariff on imports of Canadian canola, it was a here we go again moment for the Manitoba farmer. It's something that we are unfortunately kind of getting used to, he said, with these political things that are kind of happening. I don't think it's as shocking as these things used to be. It's unfortunate, but it's the world we're living in. Well, he sounds very understanding of this whole nightmare, because remember that China importing canola, they get it all from us. So this is a huge, huge blow to canola farmers, mostly in Western Canada. And I wonder if that's part of Carney's plan also. Let those Western farmers suffer. China, which sources nearly all of its supplies of canola from Canada, announced preliminary anti-dumping duties on canola imports Tuesday, escalating a year-long trade dispute that began with Ottawa's tariffs on Chinese electric vehicle imports last August. The new tariff, set at 75.8%, will come into effect today. Canada, deeply disappointed with China's decision to implement provisional anti-dumping duties in its self-initiated investigation into import of canola seed from Canada, International Trade Minister Maninder Sidhu and Agriculture Minister Heath MacDonald said in a statement 2 days ago, "We do not dump canola like we do with all of our dairy." Not all of it, but a lot of it. "Our hardworking farmers provide world-class food to Canadians and international trading partners. Canadian canola products meet the highest standards and our inspection systems are robust," they said. "Canada is committed to ensuring fair market access for our canola industry, and we remain ready to engage in constructive dialogue with Chinese officials to address our respective trade concerns." Hamblin, the farmer, says this new escalation in the tariff war between Canada and China is creating uncertainty for canola farmers like himself. Well, yeah. $5 billion in total being taken out of our pockets. With a B, billion dollars. Where's the elbows up crowd now? Where are they? They don't think Xi Jinping is as big a threat to Canada as Donald Trump, I guess. A lot of those elbows up people were federal government employees, right? They wanted Carney in there because they thought that Pierre Poilievre was going to hack and slash their jobs. And let's be honest, the federal population of employees needs to be hacked and slashed. It's huge. I'm going to show you guys in just a second. Carney said, no, we're not going to do that. Or he just kind of sidestepped that question. But now we see the federal government plans to reduce the size of the public service, but we're not going to fire anybody. It's going to be through attrition. So when you retire, we just won't replace you. See? So you don't lose your job outright, despite warnings from experts. Experts. I wonder what experts. That the federal government will have to make deep cuts to the public service if it hopes to meet its promises to reduce operational spending. Government transformation minister. Transformation. Do we need a transformation minister? His name is Joel Lightbound, and he says the intention is to rely on retirements and resignations. As the Prime Minister has mentioned, our intention is to go through attrition in terms of reducing the size of public service, Lightbound said, when asked whether the government's ongoing spending review will lead to job cuts. The minister made the comments during a Q&A with reporters following the announcement of a new cultural heritage science facility on Thursday. So no firings, just attrition. When you retire, we won't replace you. Let's have a look at the population of the federal public service. As of 2015, it was 257,034, which is a city the size of Windsor, Ontario, which is in the news tonight. It's going to be in a few minutes, but Windsor will be in the news tonight. So 10 years ago, 257,034. 34 federal employees in Canada. Now, here we are in 2025, and the number is 100,000 people more. 357,965 federal public service employees in Canada. But nobody's getting fired. It's going to be through attrition. And so I looked and I found out today that the average number is anywhere between 5,000 and 6,000 people who retire from the public service each year in Canada. So let's see, doing the math, 5,500 in 20 years, maybe 18. If that number holds, we should be back to 2015 levels. So by the year 2043, we should be back to where we need to be. And even experts say those 2015 numbers were a little bit on the high side too. Parks Canada has omitted the word genocide in the latest residential school designation. They don't say genocide anymore like they have been for the last 10 years. Let me shut this off before it turns itself on. In its latest historic site designation of an Indian residential school, Parks Canada has deleted all reference to genocide, according to Blacklock's reporter. I wonder why. Why do you think that is? Are they just quietly walking it back? Oh, that whole genocide thing, it didn't work. People are getting upset. The move was made without comment, and the agency, as recently as last February 12th, called the school's cultural genocide. So let's keep scrolling down here. In a notice of a plaque unveiling today at Manitoba's Portage La Prairie Residential School, managers acknowledged past assimilation policies without describing them as genocide. Built in 1915, the former Portage La Prairie Indian Residential School functioned within the residential school system, whereby the government and certain churches and religious organizations worked together to assimilate Indigenous children as part of a broad set of efforts to destroy Indigenous culture and identity and suppress Indigenous history. The 2015 Truth and Reconciliation Commission, which was a complete and utter disaster, was the first to describe the system as cultural genocide, which was then accepted by Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, who told the CBC, "I accept the commission's report, including the fact they used the word genocide, because, you know, he was a bleeding heart." He was a lot of things. Carney, well, his father was a principal of an Indian day school in the Northwest Territories in 1965, and he has not repeated the language genocide since taking office March 14th, or referenced allegations of school children's hidden graves at Indian residential schools. So what we're saying here is that because Carney's dad was a teacher at an Indian residential school, we're no longer saying genocide? Is that right? Really? I'm not sure if I reminded you guys. I think I did. Go back and watch Monday and Tuesday night's episodes if you're interested at all in what's going on with the Walking in the Woods ban in Nova Scotia. Scott Reed is a political analyst on CTV, and we're gonna play you a clip of something he said on some podcast in a couple of minutes. But first, here's our favorite blender guy telling you what Nova Scotia is spending their money on rather than forest fire prevention.
Scotia's government says wildfires are such a serious threat that they've taken the extreme measure of imposing climate lockdowns. They've banned hiking, camping, fishing, and in some cases, even walking on your own private land with friends. All in the name of public safety, of course. But when you look at the budget, it's hard not to see the hypocrisy. For the 2025-2026 year, the province has allocated just $1.1 million for direct wildfire suppression. That's equipment and training in partnership with Natural Resources Canada. At the same time, they've poured 37 times more, over $40 million, into broad climate change and net zero initiatives, things like net zero housing projects, community solar programs, and advancing clean technologies, whatever that means. These projects do nothing to get more firefighters in the field or more water on flames. And it doesn't stop there. The same budget hands out $1.3 million for a Mi'kmaq language revitalization strategy and $39 million to support the film industry, including $14 million to complete a Hulu TV series called Washington Black. To put that into perspective, the TV show alone costs over 12 times more than the wildfire suppression budget. The full film industry allocation is more than 35 times greater. So we have a government that claims the fire risk is so severe it must override basic property rights and personal freedoms, yet when it comes to funding the very resources that could stop these fires, they choose vanity projects, cultural initiatives, and DEI entertainment instead. If they truly believed wildfires were the existential threat they say they are, the budget would show it. Instead, it shows a political class more interested in symbolic climate branding and media productions than in protecting lives and property. The next time Nova Scotians are told there's no money for more crews, more trucks, or better equipment, remember, it's not that the money doesn't exist. It's that your safety simply isn't the actual priority.
No. Your safety is the priority. That's why you're not allowed to go into the woods. And remember what the New Brunswick Premier said the other night. She said, it's not that we think you're going to start a fire if you're allowed to go into the woods. It's just that if you fall and break your leg or your boat capsizes or something, we're not going to be able to come and save you because those people who would normally do that are off fighting a fire someplace else. But I'm sure they've got enough people standing around with those, ticket books to give you a ticket the second they see you walking into the woods. Or maybe they rely on the Fink line for that. I don't know. Anyway, Scott Reed is a political analyst on CTV. He's a former political operative for the Liberal Party. And he was on some podcast with 3 other people talking about the whole Nova Scotia thing. I'm not sure when this was, yesterday, maybe the day before. Now, there's a language warning on this because Scott does not hold himself in check whatsoever. But if you believe, and I know you probably do, you watching this right now, if you believe that this is government overreach in Nova Scotia and a charter breach, apparently you are a MAGA convoy Nazi.
Watch. Well, Post, I think, has 4 articles about this a day. Like, it's not just X. Like,
exactly. Post media. Like, these fucking people, man. These fucking people who don't step foot in the woods, right? Who don't live there. And they don't have any practical experience with this. They decide that this is a nice National Review, modern MAGA argument that they want to elicit. Like, you're going to look a firefighter in the face who's busting their guts, right? Risking their life to try to contain this thing. And all they're saying is, you know what? Like, let's not make the problem worse. Okay. Give us a chance at trying to get our hands around this thing. And these people are sitting in Toronto, in a cafe writing because the Post media editor said, we'd like 3 more articles on this. And they're all wound up about how, oh, my rights are being trampled on. This is the problem. This drives me crazy. To my mind, what's the defining characteristic of MAGA, of this whole sort of, post-COVID, pushback, conservative sort of thought line, small c conservative, whatever it is, all that convoy conservatism, right? It's selfishness. It's just undisguised selfishness. I want to fucking do it. I have no sense of community, no sense of obligation to my neighbors, family, friends. If it's what I want to do, well, then I'm a hero. Now, these are the same people who will stand in their driveway with a bottle of beer and bitch and moan about why isn't the government cracking down on those that break the law and do this and do that. Why don't they enforce it? But it's when they enforce something they dislike, well, then they are all they're all freedom fighters. Like, fuck you. We have obligations. We live in a society. If a place is on fire, we rally together to help them. You don't say, well, this is an abrogation of my rights. Like, just fuck right off to these.
No, Scott. No, you cannot legislate community. Individual rights are in the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. Before he even made that argument, he should have looked at the Charter of Rights and Freedoms such as it is. We are guaranteed the right of mobility in this country. Unless the government can prove in a free and democratic society that they can revoke that right. Now, can they say you going into the forest is going to start a fire? How do you prove something like that? You could say no fires allowed. But how do you prove that a person going into the woods for a hike with his or her dog, his or her wife or husband, their kids, how are you going to prove that that's a fire starter? You can't. So his argument is full of shite. And he is a hardcore left-wing Marxist who believes in the greater good, whatever that is, as compared to what individual rights are, which is what our country is based upon. Individual rights. It's my life. Now, of course, I'm a common sense person. When I walk into the woods, I'm going to do everything I can to not start a fire. I'm going to do everything I can to not fall and break my leg or have my boat capsize. Because we're responsible adults. We do not need to be treated like children by the nanny state. And more and more in this country, that's exactly what's happening. And shills like that need to be put in their place. Having said that, do you think you could reason with somebody like that? No, that guy is completely and totally off his rocker. He's off his nut. He is unhinged. Full stop. Now, remember we told you the other day there was a fire. It was very, very curious timing, I thought, that there was a fire on the outskirts of Halifax on Tuesday. What? Now, they said it was from sparks from some road crew breaking rocks. That turned out to be not true. I think the government was trying to go ahead and spread that rumor. Didn't work out for them. And now, from the left-wing corporate publicly funded CBC, police seek to identify man suspected of setting fire at Nova Scotia Power Station. Man ignited a spool of wire with a torch, says Crime Stoppers. And this is the guy right here. This was brought to my attention by our friend Chet Chisholm today out in Nova Scotia. Thank you, Chet. Nova Scotia Crime Stoppers. There's that guy. Look at him. What does he look like to you, this guy? Write it in comments. I want to hear what you have to say. I got a word came to my mind instantly, but I'm not going to say it. I want you guys to say. Nova Scotia Crime Stoppers asking for the public's help to identify a man they believe deliberately set a fire at a Nova Scotia power station, Fall River, Wednesday. First responders were called to a fire at Nova Scotia Power Station, 2900 block of Highway 2, 3:48 p.m. Atlantic. An investigation found that a man used a torch to set a blaze of spool of wire next to a building on the property. RCMP say other spools of wire were found with burn damage from an incendiary device. An incendiary device? Who's got an incendiary device just kicking around in their garage or their trunk? Do you? As a regular common sense Canadian? I know I don't. The prospect of having a fire in the heavy populated area of Fall River would be devastating to our community, so please help police solve this crime, says a news release from Nova Scotia Crime Stoppers. Halifax Regional Fire and Emergency crews quickly extinguished the fire, which did not spread to nearby structures or wooded areas. RCMP are investigating the case. Again, let's have a look at this guy. What does he look like to you? Mo, where's his mask? Alien immigrant. No, not to me, he doesn't. Firebug, Howard says. Yeah. Just looking for the word that I've got in my brain. I don't see it yet. Paid, yeah. Phil Collins clone. That's a good one, Cam. Thank you. Roger. Yes. Roger says Antifa. Yes. That's exactly what this guy looks like to me. He looks like Antifa. Working alone, though. Normally, they don't work alone. What's going on with immigration? Mark Carney said he was going to be reducing the numbers this year. Have they been reducing the numbers? Well, nobody knows because you can't get your hands on an immigration report. Here's Brian Lilly of Post Media.
Conservative MP and immigration critic Michelle Rempel, who alerted the country to this last week. It seems that the Carney Liberals have just stopped releasing public information through the open portal dataset on the government website on how many immigrants were getting into this country. There hasn't been an update since the March numbers, and those came out in May. My colleague Brian Passafume was writing about this and asked the department what happened. They didn't get back to him till after press time, but eventually they sent him a statement saying that they were updating how the data is being presented. Let me quote. The goal is to provide clearer explanations of trends and greater context to help Canadians better understand data about key IRCC programs. That would be Immigration, Refugees, and Citizenship Canada. As part of this work, we're updating our web content to make the data more accessible and meaningful. The most recent statistics will be published shortly. One other thing they told him was that if you really wanted it, you could ask for it. Well, lots of people rely on this data. As Rempel pointed out, everything from local governments, provincial governments, school boards, home builders, businesses, all kinds of people rely on this data, and it's been missing for months. And Rempel's concern is that, well, the government's just going to fudge the data. Now, why does this matter? Because immigration has been a huge issue for the past number of years. As former Prime Minister Justin Trudeau says, they messed up the system and that we're bringing in more people than we could absorb. Well, what's happening now? Are we still bringing in massive amounts of people? It's kind of weird because we're getting, well, mixed signals from Statistics Canada. On the one hand, their quarterly population estimate for the first 3 months of this year said, oh, there was virtually no growth. There were only about 20,000 people added in the first quarter. Well, that's weird because their monthly jobs report, the labor force survey, was showing that about 96,000 people were added to the workforce in those first 3 months. Canada doesn't have a growing population of people 15 and older due to a baby boom. It's only happening due to immigration. Now, those numbers would be lower than a year or two ago, but they're still quite high. 32,000 people per month coming into the country and added to the labor force. That doesn't include children and people that aren't in the labor force. So that's an increase. We can see from the real-time population clock that StatsCan has that we've added about 1 million people over the past 18 months. How many over the past 3 months, 6 months? We don't know. We are not being told the proper information, and I think Michelle Rempel is right. The government's doing this for political reasons. They realize that they messed up the system that Canadians used to support wholeheartedly, and now they're dealing with a system that is broken, one that has become controversial, one that has become a lightning rod, and the reason it is all those things is because of bad Liberal policy. Are the Liberals going to fix it, or are they just going to keep hiding the numbers or fudging the numbers? We'll see what happens when they finally start releasing the data shortly, whatever that means.
You know, they have this thing in Winnipeg every year, every August. It's called Folklorama. It's been going on since the early 1970s. It's a cultural thing. Now, Manitoba used to trumpet itself as a multicultural wonderland. We had immigrants to this province from all over the place. And when they said all over the place back in the 1970s, 80s, and 90s, they were talking about mostly European countries. There's a Hungarian pavilion, which is where I'm going tomorrow night with my friends. And there was a British pavilion. English, Scottish pavilion, Welsh pavilion, Irish pavilion, France, French pavilion, German pavilion, Italian, Spanish, Portuguese, all of that. And of course, it's expanded since then. We've got pavilions from immigrants from all over the world. But this year at Folklorama, there is no Indian pavilion. I suppose if you want the Indian pavilion, all you have to do is go to your local convenience store or get in the back of a taxi cab. Or just walk down the street, for that matter. We talked last night with Grant Abraham about Stephen Harper possibly being one of the shadowy man in black suits that is actually running the Conservative Party of Canada from behind closed doors. And we know he's got a lot of connections. Since he's left office, he has built up a huge consulting business especially when it comes to weapons of war. He's connected with some very, very, very high-powered billionaires worldwide. And he's still advising the Conservative Party. But he's also advising the Liberal Party because he worked with Mark Carney. Mark Carney was the governor of the Bank of Canada when Stephen Harper was the prime minister. Well, he spoke about this just the other day.
I think it's fair to say, probably the most pro-American prime minister Canadian history. And I tell people that if a year ago the government had asked me, President Trump's coming in, he's talking about, big challenges on trade, USMCA, tariffs, what would you advise? I would have said a year ago, this is a real opportunity for Canada to really deepen its economic and security partnership with the United States. However, when this government did actually ask me a few weeks ago my advice was the opposite. My advice was, yes, on the economy, we've got to kind of get something short-term worked out with the Trump administration, but this really is a wake-up call for this country to truly diversify its trade export markets. Just because we have that geographic proximity does not justify the degree of dependence that we have on a single market, which is sometimes disadvantageous. And the other thing, in terms of security, my advice to the government is let's make sure we spend a lot more on defense so that we can be independently responsible for our own land, seas, and skies, independent of the United States.
Has Canada ever been independent from the United States in your lifetime? Militarily, economically, in any way at all? Not in my lifetime. I remember when I was 10 years old, for goodness sakes, my parents and their friends making jokes about the Canadian military. That would have been in the mid-1970s. Since the end of World War II, and I think this was done by design, Canada's military used to be strong, used to be the fourth largest navy in the world. But since the end of World War II, Canada's military has been significantly downsized and turned into a peacekeeping force. And now it's a nub. It is a fraction of what it used to be. And that was still considered a joke back in the 1970s. So how much money would they have to spend to rebuild it to respectable standards? Never mind a military that would be required by a country of this size to guard all of those huge long borders that we have. And the North, let's not forget the North. We would need a standing army of at least 500,000 men and women. We would need so much equipment because most of the equipment they have is dated. And we've given a lot of our stuff to Ukraine. And we would need nuclear weapons. Canada would need nuclear weapons. We don't have those. How much money would that cost? Trillions. How fast could we do it? Not very. 20 years, maybe? For us to catch the United States militarily, which is absolutely impossible, by the way, they would have to nationalize all of the industries in this country that make weapons of war, and there are a few big ones too. But they're not going to do that because they're buddies. The politicians and the big businessmen, they're buddies. Private-public partnerships, remember? That's never going to happen. So what the hell is Harper talking about there? I'll leave it up to you to decide. So that's all of the federal Canadian news. Let's go to some provincial news. I caught this. Remember I said a few weeks ago when Alberta's sovereignty, the conversation was really starting to heat up, and it's apparently still really hot there now. We talked about it with Grant last night, a little bit, that it was going to be a game of marketing to win the hearts and minds of Albertans who are in the middle. Grant said last night, he goes, well, right now, if you talk to the average Albertan, you're going to get maybe 7 or 8 and 10 who say, yeah, I absolutely want to be independent. But when you really get serious about the conversation, that number goes down to about 2 or 3. And then the other 4 or 5 who said, yeah, start questioning. They start waffling a little bit. So we need to really firm up that support. How are you going to do that? By changing the question, changing the narrative. Instead of why should we leave, it should be more like why should we stay? And you need a very slick marketing campaign to do that. So watch this latest post. And I'm not sure which sovereignist group this comes from, maybe the APP, but have a look.
We could lead the world in energy, innovation, and freedom if we had our own country.
$79 for steak. Alberta needs to leave this country. When Alberta goes independent, we'd pay 0 income tax in 5 years. Serious. That's like getting a raise overnight.
Mass immigration is breaking the system, and that's why Alberta needs independence. We can build a system that works.
I'm done waiting. The second that independence petition drops, I'm signing it so I have a future.
That's slick, man. And you know what got me, aside from those 2 incredibly good-looking women in that commercial? Not gonna lie. The dude in the middle holding the steak. I was just at the grocery store yesterday, and I thought, I got a little barbecue on my balcony. Maybe I'll grab myself some steak. So there was this package, 2 steaks. I forget the cut. 2 medium-sized steaks, $54.73. I couldn't believe it. I forgot to take a picture. But what are you even talking about? Obviously, they're trying to discourage us from eating red meat because that's all part of the climate agenda and Agenda 2030 and all of that. But there's no justification for that. And think about Alberta beef producers. $79 for a couple of steaks in that package that guy was holding? Come on. That's outrageous. It should be half that, less than half that. That's nuts. Remember the other night we were talking about smart cities. I was having this discussion with Grok and with ChatGPT today. I don't want you guys to go, oh my God, Shadow's becoming an AI. That's not what's happening. I believe in keeping your friends close and your enemies closer. And so I was having this discussion with Chat today. And I asked it, how many Canadian cities are following smart city infrastructure plans? And they listed Ottawa as number 1, Vancouver number 2, North Vancouver as number 3 because it's its own separate entity. Kelowna. And I said, is there any more? Edmonton. Are there any more? Winnipeg. Calgary. They didn't mention Saskatoon or Regina. Then they said Toronto, Montreal, Halifax. But you got to keep poking and prodding at both of those AI programs before it gives you all the information that you want, which is what I did. Every major city in this country is following smart city infrastructure. And this story here from left-wing corporate CTV, Windsor, not a major city in this country, but definitely an important border city, about 350,000 people, maybe a little bit less. Windsor seeks firm for 90-cam downtown surveillance network. The other night we talked about 6G. Not coming out for 5 years, 2030, ironically. Maybe a little bit longer. When 6G hits, things will change fast. I invite you to open up a Google browser and just type in 6G and read what the Google AI says about 6G. Maybe 5 or 6 paragraphs. Read it. It's going to make your nose hairs curl. Windsor looking for a security company to build and run a surveillance. So they want the company, a private company, to run a surveillance network of cameras in downtown Windsor as part of its Strengthen the Core revitalization plan. How about adding some police officers? Neighborhood watch. A request for proposals issued August 1st outlines a $450,000 program that would see a private firm supply, install, monitor, and maintain cameras at participating businesses. We're looking for a qualified vendor in security or surveillance. Oh, Palantir, just call them. They'll come a-running. Security or surveillance will supply, install, and basically manage the surveillance equipment. Andrew Dar, the city's commissioner of corporate services, says. I find that extremely interesting as we enter this new Marxist realm in our free and democratic society. Actually, it's been going on for quite some time. I think you guys know that by now. Here is respected South African journalist Lara Logan talking about it.
These people, they cannot have you ask questions of substance because everything is built on a lie. Climate, all those climate programs, all built on lies. The whole race narrative, all built on lies. Does that mean there's no racism? Does that mean there's no difference? No. But what do? They want to take race, they want to take differences, and they want to create them, turn them into problems which can never ever be solved. Okay. So the color of your skin, you can't change it. Therefore, you can never solve this problem. Yep. Unbiased racism, it's unconscious. If you're not conscious of it, you can't fix it. So, and if you look in all of these places, they create issues. Like as a man, you're going to have masculine instincts. They now teach you that masculine instinct is evil. It's a problem can never be solved. CO2. We create CO2 as we breathe out. It's critical for life on Earth. You will never ever. They created a nonsense problem that can also never be solved because to remove CO2 from the Earth is to kill all life on Earth. So once you start to recognize the tactics, it becomes very, very simple. It's easy. You don't have to be a genius to see the same tactics playing out over and over again. Transgenderism, it's the same thing. This is an attack on us as we were created to break down communication, to isolate us so that we can be controlled. Why do they have to kill the food supply? Because they have to control what we eat. We have to control our movements. And of course they react like this about race because at the end of the day, people don't really care. But we do gravitate towards our own. We do like to be with people who understand us. When you marry someone, what is the biggest thing that tears people apart? That my wife doesn't get me. She doesn't understand me. Well, you can, if you're overseas and you bump into somebody from, the United States, you might not have talked to that person back home. But when you're there, you have this common shared history of being American. And so that brings you together. Well, look all over America. New York. The Chinese gravitated towards each other in Chinatown, in Little Italy. I mean, we instinctively gravitate towards our own. So it's okay to do that. But they've made those things that are natural and instinctive in us, they've made those war crimes.
Oh, man, that is a great summation, what she just said. But how do they do it? Well, it's brainwashing, Shadoe. Yeah, but how do they do it? They got a network. It's a very vast network. Donald Trump is trying to, some say, trying to dismantle that deep state network that exists in the United States. It exists in every country. Canada, definitely. And if it's not a deep state here, it's probably China controlled. But here is Glenn Beck of The Blaze breaking down. This is about an 8-minute video, you guys. So sit back, grab some popcorn, a drink, whatever. And listen to him break this down on his chalkboard. I love when he does this. Breaking down the deep state. Watch.
To chalkboard number 1. This is the deep state machine. So the deep state machine, how does this work? Okay. At the core, it is just really a self-reinforcing ecosystem. It is a living, breathing, and growing organism. I wanted you to take a look at this. This is agencies like the CIA, FBI, NSA, and the ODNI. They feed intel, often right here, to the NGOs. So these agencies, this is where it's planned, this is where it's hatched, somewhere in here, okay? And then it's fed down to the next level, to the NGOs, to the think tanks. These groups launder it into independent reports. So all of a sudden, the NGO, let's say the NED, or let's say it's a law firm, Fusion GPS, or the Atlantic Council, or a defense contractor like Raytheon, or just the media. They get the story passed down to them. These players may be involved, they may be hapless dupes, but it's fed down to them. And then, have you ever worked at a place that had a consultant come in and do research? And it's my experience, at least, that consultant always leaves verifying what the boss thought was going on. I've never had a consultant where I've like, yeah, well, that's independent. They really got that one. It's always been, they're just reinforcing. That's what's happening here. This is passed down here just to reinforce and give this answer down to the third level, okay? And that's the media. It amplifies. They cite anonymous sources. It's narrative engineering at its finest. And in the ODNI report released by Tulsi Gabbard last month, details on how this works, how the 2016 intelligence community assessment on Russian interference was manipulated to target Trump. But I also believe to kick the dust and the trail clean for what I'm going to show you on the other two chalkboards tonight. On December 9th, 2016, despite previous analysis that Russia did not manipulate the election, Obama's security team met in the Situation Room to discuss a new approach. The attendees included Susan Rice, James Clapper, Andrew McCabe, John Brennan, Ben Rhodes, Loretta Lynch, Jay Johnson, John Kerry, Victoria Nuland. Remember those names, okay? And they're all basically members from all of these agencies with big, scary names, the three-letter agencies we've come to expect. Now, this time, new marching orders were given. Now the goal was to change the framing. Russia had to be the bad guy, and their chosen candidate would be President Donald Trump. Quote, "The IC is prepared to produce an assessment per the president's request that pulls together the information we have on the tools Moscow used and the actions it took to influence the 2016 election." Notice it doesn't say that this is based on new information or new intelligence. We have a new whistleblower. We've got some super secret intercepts that prove whatever. None of that. This came per the president's request. Obama was unhappy and the witch hunt commenced, or should I say the coup commenced, because this is what it was. Any dissenting views, they were suppressed. The Durham Annex goes further. It reveals how the FBI failures, when they failed to prove Clinton's plan to link Trump to Russia, they refused to consider the intelligence to be credible, even though the CIA was all but screaming to them that it was credible. But here, black and white, redacted, as they like to do. But how do they operate? Okay, levers of operation. So let's just take the Donald Trump thing. These guys decided, no, this doesn't fit the narrative. We want to go for this narrative. So the boss, the president, said, oh, we need this narrative. So these guys went down and they fed a bunch of things, Fusion GPS. The think tanks, the media, sources, confidential sources, unnamed sources tell us that Donald Trump is being investigated. So they're feeding it here. These guys, if they are hapless dupes, they're really stupid at this point. But I believe they know what they're doing because they keep getting it and going from the very same source. Then the levers of operation. The levers of operation is where the rubber meets the road. This is where the power of the impact comes. The first thing to do is surveillance. Now remember, just like that consultant that goes to your office and finds what the boss is looking, they are not actually doing surveillance and going and getting a FISA because they have information. They are looking for information and they're looking for a specific answer. So the FISA warrants are based on unverified documents like Christopher Steele. which started up here, came down to Christopher Steele, then went down to the media, then went to FISA. And remember, this was funded by Clinton's campaign through Perkins Coie. This one, private company law firms, Fusion GPS, Perkins Coie. And the Durham investigation showed how it was weaponized through Russiagate. So the FBI goes to the FISA courts, and they can't get what they need to tell the FISA court to be able to get a wiretap. So somebody in the FBI actually alters the documents to ensure the FISA applications on President Trump went forward. Second, election interference. Right here. The 51 Intel experts, remember that? 51 Intel officials labeling the Hunter Biden laptop Russian disinformation. Remember that in 2020? That is straight from the playbook exposed in these reports. According to the polls, 79% of the country believed that truthful coverage over Hunter's laptop would have changed their vote. But we didn't get truthful coverage. We got deep state manipulation. We got propaganda from 51 intelligence officials who we all trust because we're dopes at this point. And the media did what they were told. Disinformation. Remember, all Twitter and everybody says, well, the FBI came to us and said this was going to be coming out. They fed that down here, and they fed it down here. Now, the third part is funding, and this is amazing. Tax dollars flow through agencies like USAID and the State Department to NGOs. We're going to get deeper into that later, but here's a teaser. USAID funneled $270 million to George Soros adjacent organizations for democracy, programs for democracy all over the world. And don't forget the media coordination. Remember that meeting in Obama's White House with all of his national security heads? The people that day, up until that day, all of them had been saying Russia was not a threat. They were not an election threat. Well, the new marching orders came through and the narrative shifted. Didn't really take very long. And remember, not because of intelligence, but because the president directed them to change it. Yes, what the media reported. On the same exact day, this article. Secret CIA assessment says Russia was trying to help Trump win the White House. How could they on the same day? He just said, this is what I want. Somebody went out and fed it to the media and they amplified it and we're off to the races.
Yeah, so you wonder if Canada's got the same kind of a setup? Yes, we do. It's not quite as elaborate as that, though. There's not as many moving parts. As a matter of fact, they do it right in front of our faces. There are publications, very hardcore Marxist publications out there like Press Progress or The Tyee. I'm sure you've heard of those too. On their websites, they say they are funded by the New Democratic Party of Canada or by the Liberal Party of Canada, or in some cases by the Government of Canada. And the Government of Canada also funds the left-wing corporate media. All of the small publications in all of the medium and small-sized cities and towns, they get a good deal of money from the federal government. And the big corporations do as well. And it's right in front of our faces, and we say nothing. Nothing. Mark Carney is going to increase the funding of the CBC by another $200 million, I think it is. They're going to get $1.6 billion of our tax dollars to feed us propaganda. If that were a private organization with numbers like that, with ratings like that, they'd have been out of business a long, long, long time ago. Now, I know that some of you guys are talking about Trump being run by Israel, and that may be true. Some people are saying yes, some people are saying no. Jeff Evely, former Air Force Master Sergeant in the Canadian Armed Forces, Master Warrant Officer in the Canadian Armed Forces, said no, he doesn't think that's the case. I do. I think Trump is run by Israel, at least in part. But he has been doing some things down there that no other president or world leader has ever thought about doing. Look at this. Billions of dollars in USAID. Billions of dollars. He went, he found it, and he stopped it. But then there was a lawsuit, and he had to keep it going, and then there was an appeal, and Trump won. Look at this. The appeals court says only the Government Accountability Office can challenge Trump's foreign aid freeze. So he's going to keep freezing those funds, maybe direct them someplace else. A 3-judge panel of the U.S. Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia Circuit has handed the Trump administration a significant victory in ruling that only the Government Accountability Office may challenge the administration's freeze on foreign aid funding. The ruling lifts an injunction that required the State Department to continue making foreign aid payments. Interesting, isn't it? Now, you know what Trump is doing in Washington, D.C. Let's throw it up on the screen here. He's essentially taken over law enforcement in Washington. Trump says he's placing Washington police under federal control and activating the National Guard. So let's go ahead and go through this story. And by the way, there's a lot of video on X and other social media platforms of people who live in Washington, black, white, Hispanic, whatever, who are saying, oh man, this needed to be done for years. Thank you, President Trump. I'm not sure if Trump has rounded those people up and got them to say that for a cost. I'm not sure if they're making these videos on their own, but people are ecstatic that they can walk the streets of Washington, D.C. again. It was a cesspool for years. So Trump said Monday he has taking over Washington's police department, activating 800 members of the National Guard in hopes of reducing crime, even as city officials, hang on, let me see this. I can't see it. I got something else up on the screen. Stressed crime is already falling in the nation's capital. Well, that may be true to some extent, but murder is still up. Violent crime is still up. So yeah, people want to see some relief in that department. Trump, flanked by his AG, his defense, you may have seen the video. His defense secretary and the FBI director said he was declaring a public safety emergency and his administration would be removing homeless encampments. Now, like I said, there's a lot of video out there of Washington residents who are happy AF that Trump has done this. But the other side is saying, it's military walking all over the streets of Washington. All of the left-wing corporate media in Canada also echoing that. Trump is trying, it's a military coup, it's a takeover. He is within his legal rights to do what he's doing. So if you want to talk about funded opposition, George Soros and the like, there was a group of people who were protesting the fact that Trump was cracking down on crime in Washington. And Alex Stein, you guys know Alex Stein? Played a video of him last week. He's a comedian. He's a right-wing comedian. Well, he goes out, he made his bones going out in the street and harassing Antifa encampments. And he did it again with this protest, I think was funded by Soros or whoever. And he's rude. He calls names, but he's funny. But look at the tactics these people, even the older ones, these people try to use to get him to shut up and turn his camera off.
These libtards, purple hair, vaccinated. These guys are all libtarded. So what do you guys got going on here? What is this? Are you guys all libtarded? You guys hate Trump? Why do you hate Trump so much?
Because he rapes kids.
Oh, you have proof of that?
Yeah, there's photos of him palling around with Epstein.
Mm-hmm. So that means he raped a kid?
Yeah.
You don't think Joe Biden would have put him in jail if he raped a kid?
I don't think Joe.
Why wouldn't Joe Biden release it? I know, but Joe Biden was in power the last 4 years. Why didn't he release it?
Because that's
if Trump was guilty, I'm saying if Trump was actually guilty, don't you think that he would actually try to put him in jail? Oh, you guys are libtarded. Oh, really? I know, because you guys are libtarded. No, I'm just saying, this is what these libtards, they won't even have a conversation. Yeah, that's why you guys, look at these cuss words. Look at these cuss words they have. Look at this libtard. Look at you guys. There's kids that
look at this old lady, and there you curse bad language all over that. Yeah, having said that, we used bad language up here too. F Trudeau, remember? Look at this old lady blowing the whistle. Now, if I'm him, I'd have slapped it right out of her mouth, but that would be assault. So you've got to really check yourself. But look at the tactics they're trying to use. It's ridiculous.
Around here, and this is the signs they have. This is the signs they have. See, these are what these libtards, purple hair, vaccinated. These guys are all libtarded. Okay, so what are you, transgender? Are you a weird trans person? Awesome.
I'm Debbie. What's your
I'm
name?
Alex.
Hi, Alex.
Nice to meet you. What do you want to say?
What's your question?
So my question is, don't you think it's kind of bad to have a big F-U-C-K at the Union Station where all the kids are around? Don't you think that's bad to say that in front of children?
Well, we are in a public space.
Yeah.
And we still have...
Is it disrespectful to use that sort of...
We still have freedom.
I know, but I'm saying, is that disrespectful to have a sign like that?
It's no different than all of the T-shirts that I see a lot of.
Yeah, so he's not saying it should be against the law. He's saying, is it disrespectful? And a lot of people kind of blur that line, right? Disrespectful, rudeness is not against the law. And so she's right. You can go ahead and say whatever you want to say, no matter where it is, as long as you're not causing anybody any harm. Right? But at the same time, they're rude. They're using the F word in front of kids.
Trump supporters have walking around.
I don't know if I've seen that. I don't think I've ever seen that T-shirt. I've never seen that T-shirt. I've never seen that T-shirt. Are you transgender too? Or are you a boy or girl? It's hard to...
Anyway, the guy goes on and on and on and on. And what he insinuates at the end, Alex Steen, you can find him on all the usual socials, probably most prominent on Rumble. What he insinuates at the end of that video is that these people are funded by Tides, funded by George Soros. And that is the end. And they're only there from 9 to 5. They never, ever protest through the night like the younger ones do. And, amazingly, when you see a lot of those protests, whether it's a Palestinian protest or whatever Antifa-style protest that you see in the streets, do you know how expensive bricks are? Pallets of bricks? That's really costly. And yet they always seem to manage to get their hands on huge pallets of bricks to throw. Who's paying for that? Part 2 of Candles in the Dark tonight. This is a seminar put together by public speaker, author Larkin Rose. We put on part 1 last night in the extension, and this is a program. This is actually a series, a seminar that I purchased myself a couple of years ago. I'm always looking for ideas, ways to reach people. And it's been very helpful, this program. You have to go in with the right mindset. Now, on this show, it's different. But when you're talking one-on-one with somebody, you're just having a conversation with a buddy, let's say, and certain subjects come up, you have to understand how you're going to go about it. What's your game plan? What's your goal? And why you're doing it. Are you actually trying to help that person, or is it just for your own personal gratification? So part 2, the plan, is coming up tonight in the extension on shadowdavis.com for you all access Nighthawks. And that could be you if you had yourself a membership. And by the way, the Shadoe store is opening very soon. I'm going to put the finishing touches on it this weekend, designing all the clothes. It's been really fun and frustrating at the same time. But I think you're going to like some of the stuff back there. Will I do giveaways? A lot of people are asking, and I will check out how much it costs me to do that. And if I can, I will. But in order for me to keep this show going, I do need your support, guys. So become a member. Get the extra content. You don't have to watch it live at night like some people do. You can watch it the next day. You can save it up for the weekend if you want, and you can binge it then. At least an hour extra content every single night on shadowdavis.com on the extension. So tonight we learn how to speak to the normies. For the rest of you guys, you have a great weekend. Have a great Friday and a great weekend. And I will catch you again on Monday night at 8 o'clock Central for another Shadoe at Night live stream. Love you all and appreciate you all. And for you Nighthawks, I'll see you in 2 minutes on the website.